Hey guys, and welcome to All Things FPS. In this video I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about the CSGO cheating epidemic. In my personal experiences, it's worse than ever before. There are more cheaters playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive than ever before. I started playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive shortly after it released, and I was playing Source for years before that. If you check out the Google search, you'll see just how many cheats are available for the game. Numerous websites offering free and paid for cheats for Counter-Strike. It's absolutely riddled with cheats at the moment. All of these games were recorded from Prime matchmaking summer 2017 on European servers. I guess 12 to 15 matches, if that. The ranks that these games were played at vary from LEM to global. I usually play with 3 or 4 other lads and our ranks vary from LEM to global elite. So a fairly decent level of matchmaking, however the experience is mostly negative. It's hard to enjoy the game these days because of the sheer amount of cheaters. I would say it's rare to get a clean game. 4 of every 5 games, if not more, would be where you're facing off against a cheat. 1, maybe 2, maybe even 3 or 4 cheats. This is quite common to face multiple cheaters on the opposing team. Sometimes it's incredibly blatant, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not obvious. However, it's not until you watch back the demo that these nuances give it away and shed some light on the situation that in fact you're actually playing cheaters. However, you check that demo because things just don't feel right. You know, after all the years of playing Counter-Strike, all the hours you've racked up, something just feels off. You're consistently being outplayed, outpositioned, being taken down from very, very fast peaks in the right direction. And it just feels like your luck is consistently bad, getting killed through smokes, etc, etc. You then watch that demo and it becomes apparent. The problem is at the higher ranks of matchmaking, you're facing cheaters that have been undetected by VAC for the longest period of time. You know, it takes a large amount of time to grind your account up on the non-prime ranks and then begin to play the prime, and then finally to get up to those top ranks. It takes a little bit of time, so assuming that, then the cheaters are going to be undetected for a fairly long period of time. Plus that, you generally expect the players to have a little bit more experience. Some of them are fairly decent players that use cheats. Then it's harder to detect that cheat because they're very good at hiding it. They've become good at hiding it to surpass the Overwatch system. And I think that's the problem. It's more often than not blatant. You don't see these blatant spin botters on Prime anymore. It's just subtle stuff that when you've been playing for a while, it becomes more obvious. But to someone that doesn't have much experience in the game, they probably wouldn't even be able to tell. Where, if you see a spin botter, it's obvious straight away that they're using something to help them play the game. I would say most of the cheats that I've played against tend to use a deagle, AWP, scout, and then the rifles. But that sometimes gives it away because, I don't know, obviously some cheats are better than others. Some may be paying for the cheats, some may get the cheats for free. Obviously they're all different. I don't really know how it works, but sometimes you watch how a player plays, the way they control the rifles, and they always seem to be able to get their headshot, even though their aim is veering off to one side, or they start the spray 5 foot to the left of the player. Always seems to lock on to a player and get that kill. If you watch the demos and pay close attention, you'll notice that sometimes the players are not up to the skill that you'd expect to see at a certain level on matchmaking. So they don't have the movement mechanics or the gun control, as I mentioned before, or the crosshair positioning to play, or what you would expect to have to play at this level. However, they're getting 25, 30, 35, 40 frags in a match, sometimes even more, with headshot ratios of over 80%. That's a frequent occurrence. Very, very, very common. So the scores and the aim of the players doesn't match the other mechanics that you'd expect those players to have. And the more you play, the more obvious this becomes. One of the guys that we play with had basically not played Counter-Strike Global Offensive before. He played Source with us back in the day, and last year he started playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive. So we had to play non-prime to play with him because You have to get to a certain rank to be able to play Prime together, because it doesn't unlock for quite some time. You know, for a good couple of months at the very least, we were playing non-Prime with him, and the cheating there, that was last year, was even worse. I mean, it was horrendous. There you're facing spin botters, which you just can't play against. I mean, some of these games here, we won, some of the games we lost, and some of the games were fairly close. Some of the games we do get hammered, admittedly, but if you're playing on non-Prime against spin botters, you're never going to win. It's pointless. You know, it's just too hard to play against. You might as well just quit the game, accept the ban and move on to the next match. It was a utterly horrendous experience. I would say that the cheaters in non-Prime, at least from my experiences last year, were well over 50% of all the players that I played against. Also, something you'll notice before going back to the kind of scenarios that give it away is constant and very impressive movement accuracy when they're jumping or dropping. They always seem to be able to get the hits in whilst they're falling or whilst they're moving into a certain position that would otherwise hinder your ability to aim. So what does that say for players that are just starting to play the game? They've just picked up Counter-Strike and are forced to play in the non-Prime matchmaking system. You know, where suddenly they're up against, you know, 2, 3, maybe even 4, 5 cheaters every single match. You know, it's not a good experience. They're more than likely not going to want to play the game, or more realistically, they're going to be forced to purchase cheats themselves. And I think this is what we're seeing with more and more cheaters playing the game, playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive. The numbers aren't going down, that's for sure. It's getting worse and worse. I don't think anyone can deny that, at least that plays matchmaking consistently. The hackers in Prime matchmaking, especially at the higher ranks, tend to be a lot more cautious with how they use their hacks, sometimes tending only to use the cheats when they feel they need to if they're struggling to win a game. It's very common for us to go 8, 9, 10 to 0 in the first half and then suddenly end up losing the game. Of course, this is Counter-Strike, it can happen, anything can happen. You can go up 14 to 1 in the first half and still lose the game. But this happens so consistently, and you watch back the demo and you can see they've turned their cheats on in the 9th or 10th round. Sometimes if they believe that you're cheating or a person on your team is cheating, then they'll turn their cheats on in revenge. This is very common also. Unfortunately, if you're hacking already, you're going to believe that anyone half decent in the game is hacking it, and it just leads to a vicious cycle where they believe they need the cheats to continue winning. And realistically they do, because they're playing at ranks that far outweigh their skill and experience level. Sometimes we'll check the player profiles of the opposition that we're going to face, and we're greeted with VAC bans, private profiles, and profiles riddled with cheat accusations. I think the latter actually less so this year. I think CSGO in general is reaching a tipping point, at least in matchmaking, where there are so many cheats in the game, it's just expected. You know, what's the point of doing an Overwatch case when there's already so many cheaters? There's already a cheater at the very least every single game that you play. It's not going to make a difference doing one Overwatch case. You know, something big needs to happen for this to change, and I think less and less people are bothering doing the Overwatch. I'd make a bet actually to say that there are less Overwatch cases being reviewed than ever before in terms of the percentage of the amount of players that are playing the game. I think less and less people are leaving comments on suspect players as well, which are helpful because it just gives you an insight, it gives you a warning as to the potential suspect players you might be facing before a game. We tend to see this less and less. In regards to the Overwatch, at the end of the day, there's no incentive to review Overwatch cases. As I mentioned, it's not like, you know, there's 1 or 2 cheats every 20 to 30 games. There is at least a cheater 4 out of 5 games, if not more than that, and that's on Prime matchmaking. Non-Prime matchmaking is even worse than that. So it's almost like the problems become too big to deal with. We need something else in place to eradicate these cheaters. You know, if more people did Overwatch, the system is in place to deal with these cheats, then potentially we could at least, you know, lower these numbers. But what's the point? You don't get anything from doing Overwatch. It would be nice to perhaps even get skins if players are interested in skins in the game. Personally, I couldn't care less about the skin system. But certainly a lot of players do and are willing to spend a lot of money on skins. So if Valve could maybe give out rewards for doing X amount of Overwatch cases, especially if the reviewer tends to agree with what the majority say as to whether that player is cheating or not. You know, if they're correct case reviews, then they could get a reward, you know, a skin every so often, or maybe even a financial incentive. You know, at the end of the day, we're the ones that are spending time eradicating cheaters from their game. You know, we've purchased the game from Valve. We're the ones that have to eradicate the cheaters using their Overwatch system. There should be something in place that is rewarding us for this time spent doing this. You know, it's their game, it's their cheat system that isn't working. We have to remember that. You know, I've bought the game, I've paid good money for it. I know it's incredible value for money. I've played the game for thousands of hours, yet my enjoyment is hindered by cheaters that aren't being stopped by a VAC system that they've put in place. Also, this is incredibly frustrating that it never seems to be raised. This issue never seems to be raised by Valve in any of the updates. It's never mentioned. You know, it would be nice for them to maybe make a statement about that they know that the cheating is a problem in CSGO matchmaking. I mean, they must be aware of the numbers of cheats in this game. It must be. It's almost like Valve know the cheat problem, know the extent of the cheat problem, and are happy just to sit back and let cheaters buy the game 2, 3, 4 times. You know, each time they get banned, they just rebuy the game. Yeah. And to be honest, the game is just too cheap, and that means it's just repeat business for Valve. You know, a cheater's account is banned, they just buy the game, play a game. It's that simple. I would have no problems paying for a fantastic experience, a finished Counter-Strike Global Offensive with decent tick matchmaking, you know, a more intrusive anti-cheat, paying £100 for it, or paying a subscription fee and enjoying the game to the fullest that, you know, that its potential. Now, of course, there are third-party services that offer a more intrusive anti-cheat system where you can play on better tick servers. I don't really understand why Valve don't want to capitalise on this more and offer something for the more competitive players that want to play the game to its fullest potential. You know, you look at the pro scene, the cheats have riddled the pro scene for years. It's a lot less blatant than it used to be. You look at the Fnatic reign. How many flusher clips can you find from that reign where Fnatic won, you know, nearly every tournament available? There's a lot. There's more than a dozen clips. You know, he was using aim locks, blatant aim locks during that time period. And then you look at the SK lineup, the South Americans. You look back at when they were winning everything and the aim locks that were coming from some of their players, some very, very dodgy plays. And then again at Australis, a lot of dodgy plays from some of their players, and a lot of very, very suspicious aim locks for the French superstar teams going back maybe a couple of years. So it's clear that there's a problem both in matchmaking and even at the pro scene, and it's just frustrating that this is never mentioned, this is never talked about. I'd bet a lot of money on CSGO being the #1 most cheated game ever, and I don't think any game will ever surpass that in terms of the percentage of hackers versus players playing the game. I'd like to know your thoughts on the topic. How are Valve going to eradicate the cheaters in this game, or are they even going to bother? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.